This week's edition of Church Media Design TV is sponsored by Clark and Awake Images. Welcome to another edition of Church Media Design TV tips, tricks, and how-to for you, the church media designer. I'm your host, Brad Zimmerman, and I am joined every single week by my favorite bobbleheaded friends. You got it right. Keeping us honest, it's Jamie and Adam from the Mythbusters. Keeping us in line, it's Dwight from The Office, as well as we got Little Whitey, and of course, Jesus Christ, the Son of the Lord Most High. This show is all about how to use the media that surrounds us to share the story of Christ, and that is the most important story. All of this would be meaningless if we weren't doing this with a purpose, and that is the purpose behind all of this media. So all the links that I show today, all the designs, all of that stuff is so that we can then share the story of Christ, because we want to expand God's kingdom. That's what it's all about. I could care less about the latest tools and gadgets and all of that kind of stuff. As long as it's expanding the kingdom and giving Him glory, that's the only time it matters. Well, on today's episode, we're talking about more Photoshop 3D, but we're going to be talking about how to take designs and illustrations from inside Illustrator and bring those into Photoshop and extrude them using the new Repose feature of Photoshop CS5. As well as we're going to get into some details on how to break apart objects and do some interesting different things that you wouldn't normally do right off the bat, but can look really, really cool. As well as we have a ton of links and other things to inspiration and all of that stuff, and you can find all of that in the show notes. So if you head over to CMD.tv/119, you'll find our show notes with links to all of those different things and inspiration, as well as you can leave a comment there, or you can leave questions about this episode. So if my favorite bobbleheaded friends are ready, let's get into it. Well, I have a little news for you today, and the first item that I found was a brand new application for creativity, and it's called the Creative Board. You can check it out on their website, thecreativeboard.com. Now that's a great idea, and this is a great way to brainstorm with your team on ideas for gatherings or projects or new initiatives for your church. So you can check out all of that there. A single license starts at $99. You can get a 5-pack well, it's not really a site license, but it's a 5-pack kind of site license for $3.99. So that's the first one. The next one comes to us from Grayscale Gorilla, and that's Nick Campbell's site, and he does a whole ton of Cinema 4D stuff, and he's released some stuff in the past, and he's just now released a new lighting package to help make your models and your scenes look great without having to fumble through lighting. And you could even see last week when we did the Photoshop 3D tutorial how important the lighting was to get that right and how much better that made the designs look. Well, he's taking care of it for you with the new HDRI Studio Pack. And you can check out here, there's a lot of different things in here with 50 HDRI maps to quickly turn models or scenes into perfect HDR renders. And you can see like these crazy nice illustrations here and just really good soft shadows, and they look really, really nice. And it costs $70, or you can get a multi-pack for your entire team for $200. So apparently everyone has to sell multi-packs with their single license. So think about that if you're ever shipping out a product. But anyway, make sure to check out the HDRI Studio Pack as well as the creativeboard.com. Well, let's reach into the stockpile and grab you guys some great resources for you and your church. And the first one has to do with designing color. And I've said this many times before, I'm not the greatest with color theory. Sometimes I end up with the same colors in every design, and sometimes it's hard to come up with different color schemes. Well, I remembered, hey, I know this theory, and it's all about color wheels and triads and complementary tones and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, I need a color wheel. And so I went online and I found this color scheme designer website that has a great interactive color wheel here that you can, you can be in just your monotone, and it will give you a few different hues, as well as you can go to complementary colors, and it's going to pull up your different complementary colors. You can go to triads, tetrads, analogous, or analogic colors. And so you can move around and find color schemes based on all of these different things. And it will give you nice color palettes to work with. And then you can do accented. And it's going to throw in an accent color in there. So you can start finding, you know, a really nice, simple color scheme. And you can adjust that scheme. You can adjust the brightness of it. So you can go to like more of a muted tone. If you want more of a brown kind of thing. And so there's a lot of different things you can do in here. And so it's a really great website. Lots of great stuff in there that you can check out. Our next one is from Church Create, and this is just more basic, really good understanding knowledge. I thought this article was awesome. In college, I got the privilege of, you know, going through some theory things that talked about video compression. It's one thing that, you know, you don't usually find on the internet, and this is a great video compression tutorial. So this is Video Compression 101, 3 Levels of Understanding. And so it talks about this from a couple different video blogger, film enthusiast, pro videographer, and goes through a lot of different things like you shouldn't recompress your video, you should know your camera, and then it goes into like crazy things like what's the difference between 411, 420, 422, 444, and chroma sampling, as well as what's variable bit rate, what are IPB frames, and all that kind of stuff. So some really good information. If you've ever heard any of those terms before, you should go check out that article because it's a really great one. And then the last one is somebody who does all of this stuff really well. And if you ever look at Hillsong United or Hillsong regular church artwork or DVDs and you're like, man, that stuff is awesome. I bet their team is just spending all this time. Well, guess what? It's actually just one guy, and his name's Glenn, and his website is Kozu. He actually changed it, and I don't know exactly how to say it. It's KOZU.tv. And he's got a few different things in here. He just did some stuff for the new Hillsong Live 2011 album, as well as he did the new Hillsong Chapel CDs. So if we check out these chapel designs, you can see there's just some really great stuff. He's got some really cool watercolor look to it all. And so there's some really great stuff on there. I would encourage you guys to go check out Glenn's website, as well as Church Create's 101 on video compression. And of course, if you need help with color, go check out Color Scheme Designer. For all of that and more, check out the show notes at cmd.tv/119. Well, before we move on, let's say thank you to our sponsors, and our first sponsor is Clark. Now, you may know Clark as the hologram guys. They've been featured at the Story Conference. We've talked about them here on the show before, and they're working with hologram technology and seeing what that looks like in the church. Well, Clark is way more than holograms. It's not just for people with crazy huge budgets for holograms. Clark specializes in strategy, facility planning, audio, video, lighting for the local church. And what separates Clark from other firms is a long track record as practitioners in these fields. Clark's expert team can help your church design cost-effective, great-looking, and super functional spaces. So if you're looking to do any sort of upgrade or new construction, or you want to find out how to take your space to the next level, you need to check out clark.is. Well, our next sponsor is Awake Images, and Awake Images has been around for over 5 years now, and they've been creating modern artistic worship backgrounds for the church, and they specialize in triple wide content, which is great for environmental projection or for multi-screens, as well as they've started releasing 16:9 content as well. If we head over to their website, you can find examples of how this is used in environmental settings, as well as you can check out their newest volume of Christmas panoramics, which are a great volume of images that you can use to set up a really cool Christmas mood. And you can do this projected around your room, or you can do this across multiple screens. As well as you can see their other Christmas albums that they have available that will just really help set that Christmas mood. And the other album that I really like is the Sacred Panoramas. And this is just going to set a really reverent atmosphere, and it would be great for a candlelight service or something like that for Christmas Eve. So make sure to check out awakeimages.com, and if you use the coupon code of CMD.tv, you're going to get 40% off at checkout. So make sure to use that coupon code and set a new mood this holiday season. And if you want to try out these images and see how they work, their first volume is completely free. So head over to awakeimages.com. Well, this week we're going to be talking about Photoshop 3D again, and we're actually going to be talking about some of the downfalls of the Repose tool and the things that you can't do. It's very interesting, and the workarounds to make it work right. We will be able to make it all work, but we're going to have to do a few workarounds. And I learned all of this when I was creating this project. You can check this out. This is for Core Focus. This is a meeting, a Sunday night meeting we do as a body to see how we're sent on mission together. And so I was trying to make this slide, and I wanted to have that target in there. And I was running into all these problems when I went into Illustrator to design the text. I figured, man, I can just hop on over and it will work. Because if you go to the 3D tab and you mouse over Repose, and actually we're not seeing it right now, so let's just make a new bit of text here. So we'll just call this test real fast. And we go over 3D Repose. You're going to see a couple different options here. We have text layer, layer mask, selected path, and current selection. So I figured, oh, I could just use current selection, or I could use a selected path because I can bring paths from Illustrator to Photoshop. So I tried a few different things. Now, what I can do here is I'm going to do a current selection, and I'm going to do a new layer. And I'm going to color this the color that I want my text to be. So I'll just color this, let's say we want it to be blue. And I'm going to go 3D Repose, and I'm going to do current selection. Now you're going to see we have a problem. Because when we rotate, the middle of that E is not there, and it looks not right. Okay, so we have a little bit of an issue with our test text there. And so I was like, man, how do I fix this issue? So I was like, well, maybe it will work if I bring in paths from Illustrator. So we're going to go through this, and I'm going to kind of show you how to fix the problem and what I've decided is the best workflow. You may find a better workflow, but this is what works for me. So let's head inside Illustrator and let's check this out. So inside Illustrator, you can see here, this is my core focus text. So I've gone in, I've made this object, I've done my alterations, I've done my spacing and all of the different little things that I want to do. So I'm going to take and I'm going to copy this text. So I'm just going to do Edit Copy or Control C or Command C on a Mac. I'm going to go back in here. I'm just going to get rid of these layers that I don't need. And I'm going to go to Edit, Paste, and this pop-up is going to come up and it's going to say Smart Object, Pixels, Path, or Shape Layer. Now normally I would do a smart object so that I can scale that infinitely without actually ruining it, so I can scale it up and down and it's never going to lose quality. In our situation, we're going to actually go with a path. Then I'll hit OK. So as you can see, we have our path here, and if I go to my Paths tab, you'll see my working path. And I can actually go to Edit, Free Transform Path, and I can scale this guy up. Now one thing that I've learned, and we'll actually see this problem again, but one thing I've learned, and I'm just going to get rid of it right now, is I've seen that there is duplicated paths in here, and I can find this out by going to my direct selection tool here. If I click and move this, you'll see there's actually 2 copies of that. And so I'm just going to delete that one. I'm going to grab all 4 of these. For some reason have duplicates, and it may just be my Illustrator document, but I'm just going to get rid of that now. So now we're going to go back to our layers, and I have that path in there, but if I go to 3D and I do selected path, it's going to say it can't do anything because there's no selected area. Basically, it needs pixels on the screen. So I'm just going to fill this with this blue color. And now if I go to 3D Repose selected path, it'll actually make my 3D text. So now it's going to go through and render it. And you're going to see we instantly have a problem. We have the same thing that we ran into before, that our O's are totally solid. But there's a way to fix this. If we go down to the bottom to internal constraints, you'll see we have a couple different tools here. I'm just going to take my, what is this, pan, actually any of these tools you can select, and when you mouse over, you're going to get a highlight tool, and you can see I'm highlighting different pieces. I'm going to click on the center of my O, and instead of type inactive, I'm going to switch it to whole. And when I do that, it's instantly going to cut that out. So now I can go do that for all of my other pieces. So that took a little bit of time to cut out all of those pieces. So if you have a really complex logo or illustration that has lots of holes that need to be cut out, you need to keep that in mind, because it's going to take some time, but it will pay off in the end because it will work really well for you. It's going to look really nice, and you're not going to have to worry about it again in the future. But you got to keep that in mind, that you have to go and cut these things out. Again, it seems like a pain, but I think this is the best way to go about it, because you have the freedom of Illustrator of, drawing and doing all these different things, and then you can bring that over to Photoshop and extrude it and make it look nice. So now let's go back in here, and I'm just going to leave this text all the way that it is. I'm just going to hit OK, and so now we have our text here. So we're going to go to our 3D scene. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here, I'm going to fix my lighting, so I'm going to turn off that second light, take our first light, kick up its softness. Again, all of these things we covered in last week's episode, so if you want to check that out, that would really help you understand what's going on. But this is my basic way of making my text look nice. Turn off light 2 and set my softness for light 1 and 3 to 100% to make my shadows nice and soft. So we have our text looking right at first, but I started colorizing this design, and I realized I wanted that target really to stick out and be obvious, so I wanted to color it differently than the rest of the design. So we have to do something with this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back, we're going to click on our layer, we're going to right click, and we're going to do split repose meshes. And what this is going to do is it's going to split all of these things into separate objects. So I'm going to do split repose meshes. And you're not going to see anything change in the layer area here, but what you will see is everything change in the scene dialog. Because now if we go to this meshes area, or objects area, you're going to see we have a ton of different objects. So what we're going to do is we're going to quickly go through and try to figure out which one of these is our target, because it doesn't know to name one a C and the next one an O and an R and an E and then a target. Like, it doesn't know that stuff. So we have to name it for it. So I'm just going to turn off this, and so 1 is our, I'm just going to do F-focus so that I know that's the F from focus. This is the C from core, so C-core. And I'm going to quickly go through and figure out which one of these is my target. So I've gone through and I've renamed all of those objects exactly what they are. Now I could have gone through and just found my target and renamed that one object if that's the only thing I'm going to mess around with. But it's a good idea, especially if you're going to come back to this in the future, or you're going to take multiple days to work on the project, just to go through it. It's only going to take you an extra minute or two to go through and name all of them. It's just going to make it easier for you, and you'll see why in a second. So you can see I have all of this named, so it says whether or not what word it's from and what letter it is. If I go back to my my main scene area here, you're going to see we have a drop down that has all of my different things here. So and we can actually go through, and I think we can, we can't reorder these, but it'll show you exactly what these objects are. We can turn these objects on and off, but this is everything in our scene. So what I'm going to do with this selected, instead of going down here, it doesn't actually rename all these materials, so I'm going to just go back to my scene area and select my materials from here. The same material editor shows up, so I can mess around with that. So again, we're going to remove this texture from our front inflation because that is that original layer that we used, and so even if I change the color, it's never going to change. So if I go in here and change this diffuse color to red, you'll see that nothing changes, but as soon as I remove the texture, you'll see that instantly changes to red. So let's say we want to go with red for that. Let's pick a little better red, so maybe more of a maroon red, and then let's go to our extrusion color, and this one doesn't have a texture attached to it, and I'm just going to select that same red. And then let's go back and we're going to change the extrusion color for all of our other letters as well. So let's just go in here and change all of these to the blue. So I've gone through and I've changed the extrusion color for all of those separate objects. Now, looking back, the smarter way to do this is I should have changed the extrusion color for all of that and then split my meshes apart, so I only had to do it once instead of what was 8 different times that I had to do that. So that would have been the smarter way, but I'm learning my lesson along with you, so keep that in mind. So we've done that, so now that we have our objects here, the cool thing is we can actually go in, and because these are all separate objects, we can actually rotate and mess around with all of these objects individually. So I can hold down, and I'm just going to use my pan mesh tool, and I'm going to select a mesh, and I can move this mesh around. So I can move this in the scene wherever I want, and this isn't going to allow me to go front or back, it's just going sideways. So maybe I want this to be, you know, right up in that, but I still want them to be separate pieces colored differently, because if I would, you know, do this originally inside Illustrator this way, I wouldn't be able to have 2 colored blocks interacting with each other. They would all be the same. So this way I can actually do this a little bit more interestingly, I guess you could say. So I'll just move this over and move this guy over, and we can maybe we can select any of these and say, you know, snap to ground plane, and it will snap the whole object to the ground plane. So the next thing we'll do is we're going to go and we're going to click on ground plane shadow catcher. It's going to tell us that we need a different renderer. So if we remember from last week, we're going to go back up to scene. We're going to change this to ray trace draft, and you're instantly going to start seeing something that's a lot nicer looking. And I'm going to just stop this right now. I'm going to grab my camera rotate tool, and let's just flip up so we can see what that interaction between the target and the sea looks like. And that should render. And let's go to draft again. So now it's going through and rendering that out, and we can see how those objects now are interacting together and have a much more interesting look. The other thing we can do is we can go and mess around with the reflectivity of other objects and how much they reflect other objects in the scene. So what would happen if we would set this sea to be more reflective of the red of everything else in the scene, but mostly this red color? So I'm going to go in, I'm going to grab my C from focus. So let's find that. So we got coarse. So C from focus. I'm going to grab the extrusion because that's the part that you'll notice the reflection the most from. I'm just going to change my reflection up to, like, let's say 70. And you're going to see that we start to get some red reflection here on the in-between area. And if I would change this maybe up to like a 90, we're going to see it even more. So you're going to see more of this red being reflected on there. And if I would change this texture to like a white, let's say, you would really start to see a bit more in there. Well, maybe you won't. But you can see how you start to have a lot more control over this scene. So I'm just messing around here and just kind of trying to show you some of the cool stuff you can do when you can break apart these meshes and using that hole tool to cut them apart. So we're starting to get some interesting things going on here, but the biggest thing is that we've been able to take a custom design from inside Illustrator and bring that inside After Effects and cut that apart. Now let's go back to our original thing of doing a selection and see if we can do the same thing with breaking apart that original selection. So I'm just going to quickly do a new document, and we're going to type in that same test word that we started with. And so we have test. I'm just going to go back to my layers. I'm going to control click on my layer to do a selection. grab a new layer and let's colorize this with blue. So let's say this is a shape or something like that, and it's got this hole. So I'm going to go to 3D, Repose, current selection, and we have our interesting stuff going on. Yeah, so if I click on the object and I set it to hole, it's going to actually go find all of the different holes and cut those out. So you can actually use that current selection way to do that as well. So there are some different tricks along the way, you know, but I still think using paths from Illustrator give you the most flexibility that you want, because you can scale those paths and all those different things. So that's the way that I would suggest doing it. If you have any questions about any of these things or any more stuff you want to see as far as Photoshop 3D goes, make sure to leave a comment on the website, CMD.tv/119. And if you want to get a non-profit version of the Adobe Suite, make sure to check out CDW.com. You will have to call, but you'll get the Production Premium or the Master Collection for a way discounted price. I think it's more than 50% off. So it's a great deal. And if you're looking for some awesome tools, I would definitely check those out. So stay tuned next for some great inspiration. Well, this week's inspiration comes to you from Granger Community Church, and this is a promo for their new musical production of Once Upon a Midnight Clear, and this is a really cool promo. Very curious to see how this turned out live. There's a lot of interesting things going on in this piece, and it seems kind of like a grittier, almost Tim Burton-esque type performance. You can check out this inspiration and all sorts of other inspiration on the website, cmd.tv/inspiration. You can find all that and more, but check out Once Upon a Midnight Clear. Well, thanks for tuning in to another edition of Church Media Design TV. I hope that you guys learned something today. Again, you can leave comments and find out more information and all of the links in our show notes at cmd.tv/119, so you can find all of that there, as well as you can shoot me an email, brad@ChurchMediaDesign.tv. Hit me up on twitter.com/cmdtv, and of course facebook.com/bradley.zimmerman. So those are the best ways to get in touch. But again, make sure to check out those show notes on the website. Also, if you're interested in contributing to the site, you can shoot me a line on, send me an email or drop me a line on Twitter if you're interested in, bringing some new inspiration or writing articles, because I want this to be a great community effort. So make sure to get in touch with me about that. So if you guys have any questions about 3D or anything like that, we're going to be talking about more in the future. We're going to be talking about how to bring that into After Effects, as well as a whole lot of other great stuff. So as for me and my favorite bottlehead-headed friends, we're saying, see you later.